The Constitution, Amendment 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces, or in the militia when in actual service in time of war, or public danger. Nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation.
What are the issues Christians and churches are dealing with today in relation to eminent domain?
Primarily just making sure that the government can't step in and take away the church's property. Like any other property owner, the church is protective of their space, and they don't want the government to be able to come in and take advantage of, in my opinion, a very poorly written law and step around some things that shouldn't be stepped around and take advantage of those things to take the church's property away from them.
Can the government use eminent domain as a reason to take over a church?
It depends on who you ask. I think there's certain lawyers that would probably look at the law the way it's written and say that they can. And I think definitely looking at the Supreme Court decision on same-sex marriage and other things that the government is avenues that the government has chosen to do that really kind of step in on religious liberties. I think the government would look at the law and feel like they could come up with ways to do it. But the clear and simple answer to me is no. Eminent domain is something that should not and cannot apply to religious institutions because the church has the right to keep that property. There's been several cases that have been tried where the government has tried to take churches and the church has won. There's also been a case of a church that applied for a permit and a strip club protested it, and the strip club actually used an ordinance that the city had put in place to protect churches that said that no strip club or alcoholic establishment could be within 500 feet of a church. And the strip club owner argued that since he was there first, that the church shouldn't be allowed to build. So there have been cases where people have tried to work around it, but to me, the eminent domain law does not apply to religious institutions for sure, because the church should be federally protected by laws against damaging or destroying places of worship.
Is it legal for a city to deny a zoning permit to a church because the building they wish to acquire is in a commercial, agricultural, or residential zone?
I don't believe it should be, but I do know of cases where church plants have applied for permits, and the city has given them, a laundry list of things. You have to upgrade the sewage system. You have to upgrade the sprinkler system. You have to, add security doors or a security gate. And basically, they've put enough requirements on the church so that the church either decided against it or basically went bankrupt trying to come up with all the resources to make the things happen to get the city to allow them to do it. So it should not be legal, but I know specifically of cases where churches have basically been denied that opportunity to get that permit because the city thought they could make more money by allowing a different business to come and take over that place or buy that place.
This is Jeremy. First question, what are the issues Christians and churches are dealing with today in relation to eminent domain?
Well, first of all, I would say I think most Christians and people in church don't even know what eminent domain is, and so it could be something that sneakily scares them up, that they don't realize that churches can still fall under that same rule, just like regular personal property could as well. And so I think the issue may be that churches don't realize that, and that some things they maybe lose a building or whatever property and not realize it. But the other thing that may be concerning for pastors or people in church to know is that does the government use that to remove a church just for being a church? And it's not necessarily for the full public good, but is state trying to move church out, so to speak? And so that's maybe a concern that's on some churches. I do have heard a scenario, Tyler, where some cities don't want a church in a certain area because the church is not a revenue producer for the city. Instead, it takes away tax dollars, so they'd rather have a Walmart there than a church there because the Walmart brings tax revenue. So that brings some issues. What's better for the community? A Walmart with its tax revenue, or a church with its value-based influence on the community?
Cool. And I think you touched on the second question a little bit. Can the government use eminent domain as a reason to take over a church?
Yes, and I did jump over and answer that question already, but yes, they can. And there's some touchy situations, and there's been cases where that has occurred. And since the government can do that, I think churches need to be aware of that. That is something potential. It's probably not something that affects all churches, but it is definitely something that can occur. And cities, if they have the right backing, can take property from churches.
Last question, and it is it legal for a city to deny a zoning permit to a church because the building they wish to acquire is in a commercial, agricultural, or residential zone?
I don't know a definite answer here. I would lean to believe that it probably doesn't happen a lot, but there probably are scenarios where churches would be denied certain zoning privileges or denying rights to build a building or have a building in a certain area for whatever various reasons that said city or community may come up with. But I do think that they're probably under some laws or under the law in certain city states that can occur, that churches could be denied.
Yeah, because it's weird because the residential zone thing, it's almost like when they ask like, oh, can a church grow? Oh, it's a church, we kind of should let them. And then some things like, even whether it's a church, a mosque, whatever religion there is, like, oh, they're going to be too loud for this area, traffic can ruin the residential area. So I really don't know. As of right now, I don't know if it's legal or not yet, but I'm going to look more into it and see if it is. So, thank you.
Thank you.